My name is Claire Bennett, and for 10 years I believed I had the kind of marriage people secretly wish they had. My husband, Ethan, never missed an anniversary, always remembered my favorite flowers, and smiled so convincingly that everyone called him the perfect husband. I believed every word. So when my 34th birthday arrived, I spent weeks planning a quiet dinner with our closest friends and family. Nothing extravagant, just laughter, good food, and one evening where I could forget how exhausted life had become. By 6 o'clock, the house was glowing with warm lights. Candles flickered across the dining table. Soft music played through hidden speakers, and the smell of freshly baked lasagna filled every room. Everything looked perfect, except Ethan was late. He texted 20 minutes before the party, running behind. "I have a surprise. Don't be upset." I smiled. I thought maybe he'd bought me jewelry or planned a weekend getaway. I had no idea that text would become the last honest thing he'd ever send me. The front door opened exactly 40 minutes later. Everyone turned toward the entrance. Ethan walked in, holding another woman's hand. She couldn't have been older than 26. She wore a skin-tight red dress, expensive heels, and the kind of confident smile that made it seem like she belonged there. The room went completely silent. I stared at Ethan, waiting for him to laugh and explain it was some ridiculous misunderstanding. Instead, he wrapped his arm around her waist. "Everyone," he said with a grin. "This is Vanessa." No explanation, no apology, just her name. I felt every eye in the room move toward me. My sister covered her mouth. My best friend whispered, "Claire, what is happening?" Then Ethan looked directly at me and said words I'll never forget. "You deserve to know the truth." Vanessa smiled. Actually smiled. "As of today," Ethan continued, "I'm done pretending." My birthday cake sat untouched only a few feet away. 34 candles burned quietly while my entire life collapsed in front of them. I couldn't breathe. I couldn't speak. I couldn't even cry. I just stood there, frozen, while the woman sleeping with my husband admired the decorations. I had spent all week preparing. Then she looked at me and asked the most humiliating question imaginable. "So, which slice of cake is mine?" A few guests gasped. Someone dropped a wine glass. It shattered across the hardwood floor, and in that exact moment, everyone thought I was the woman who had just lost everything. They had no idea that before this night was over, Ethan would make the biggest mistake of his entire life. For what felt like an eternity, no one moved. The only sound in the room was the soft crackle of the birthday candles melting into the frosting. Then Ethan sighed dramatically, as if he were the victim. "Claire," he said, "don't make a scene." Those words snapped me back to reality. Don't make a scene? He had walked into my birthday party with his mistress on his arm, humiliated me in front of everyone I loved, and somehow expected me to protect his image. I slowly set down my wine glass before my trembling hand could drop it. Vanessa looked around the room with a smug smile, almost enjoying the uncomfortable silence. "I told him this wasn't the right place," she said sweetly. But Ethan insisted everyone should know the truth. The truth? She didn't know the first thing about the truth. Ethan stepped closer, lowering his voice just enough to sound reasonable. "Our marriage has been over for a long time. We're only hurting each other by pretending." A few guests exchanged uneasy glances. Some of them actually looked confused, wondering if they had missed years of hidden problems. They hadn't, because until that night I had no idea another woman even existed. My best friend Sophie stood beside me. "Claire," she whispered, "say something." I looked at Ethan. His expression wasn't guilty. It was confident, almost victorious. That's when I realized something. He wasn't just leaving me. He wanted an audience. He wanted everyone to remember my birthday as the night he chose someone younger, prettier, and supposedly better. He expected me to cry, to scream, maybe even beg him to stay. Instead, I took a slow breath and smiled. It was small, barely noticeable. But Ethan saw it. His confident expression flickered for just a second. "You think this is funny?" he asked. "No," I answered calmly. "I just think it's interesting." Vanessa crossed her arms. "Interesting?" "Yes," I replied. "Because people usually wait until after dessert before embarrassing themselves." A nervous laugh escaped from someone near the back of the room. Ethan's jaw tightened. He hated losing control. For years I had watched him manipulate conversations, charm strangers, and always make himself look like the hero. Tonight he believed he had written the perfect ending. What he didn't know was that I had discovered something 3 days earlier, Something so shocking that I hadn't told a single person, not even Sophie. While organizing paperwork for my birthday weekend, I found a folder Ethan had carelessly left in his home office. Inside were bank statements, secret transfers, hotel receipts, and messages he thought I'd never see. At first, I believed they proved he was having an affair, but the deeper I looked, the more I realized the affair wasn't the biggest secret he was hiding, not even close. And as Ethan stood there, smiling beside Vanessa, completely convinced he had won, I slipped my phone into my hand. Because one message, one piece of evidence, was about to turn his birthday surprise into the worst day of his life. I unlocked my phone beneath the table, my thumb hovering over a folder I had named just in case. 3 days earlier, I had promised myself I wouldn't act out of anger. If Ethan wanted to destroy our marriage, I would let the truth destroy his lies. I looked around the room. My parents were stunned. My friends looked heartbroken. Even a few of Ethan's co-workers had stopped pretending this was normal. "Ethan," I said calmly, "are you absolutely sure there's nothing else you'd like to tell everyone?" He laughed. "I've already told them everything that matters." "Everything?" He nodded without hesitation. Yes, that single word was all I needed. I connected my phone to the living room TV, the same screen we had planned to use for birthday photos later that evening. The television flickered to life. "What are you doing?" Ethan asked, suddenly uneasy. "I thought everyone deserved the whole story." His smile faded. The first image appeared on the screen. A bank statement. Then another. Then another. Quiet whispers spread through the room. "What's this?" one of his co-workers muttered. I looked at Ethan. "Would you like to explain why? You've been secretly transferring money from our joint savings account for the past 18 months? His face turned pale. "Claire." "No," I interrupted. "You wanted honesty tonight. Let's be honest." The next slide showed luxury hotel invoices, expensive gifts and hidden credit card bills, all paid with money we had been saving to buy our dream home. Vanessa's confident smile disappeared. She slowly turned toward Ethan. "You told me you were financially successful." "I am," Ethan answered quickly. I shook my head. "No, you were spending my inheritance." The room exploded with whispers. My late grandmother had left me that money before she passed away. Ethan had promised to protect it until we found the perfect house. Instead, he had used it to fund his secret life. Vanessa stared at him in disbelief. "You said those trips were business meetings." "They were. Were they?" I asked. I tapped the screen again. This time, screenshots of his messages appeared. Promises. Lies. Messages sent to Vanessa, and identical messages sent to 2 other women. The silence became unbearable. Vanessa's eyes widened as she read them. "You told me I was the only one," she whispered. Ethan opened his mouth, but no words came out. One of his co-workers slowly stood. "So, you've been stealing from your wife? And lying to everyone?" Another guest quietly picked up their coat. "I think it's time we leave." One by one, people began walking toward the door. Not because they were embarrassed for me, but because they finally saw Ethan for who he really was. He had planned to humiliate me in front of everyone. Instead, he had exposed himself. And he still had no idea. The biggest surprise of the night hadn't even happened yet. Ethan stood in the middle of the living room, desperately looking from one face to another, hoping anyone would defend him. No one did. The silence was louder than any argument. Vanessa slowly stepped away from him, shaking her head. "You lied to me," she whispered. "It isn't what it looks like," Ethan pleaded. "Claire is twisting everything." I couldn't help but smile. "No, Ethan, I didn't twist anything. I just showed everyone the truth." Vanessa reached into her purse, pulled out the apartment key Ethan had given her, and dropped it onto the floor. "I don't date liars," she said before walking out the front door without looking back. The sound of the door closing echoed through the house. For the first time that night, Ethan looked genuinely afraid. He turned toward me. "Claire, please, we can fix this." Fix it? The man who had planned to destroy me in front of my family now wanted a second chance. I calmly picked up a sealed envelope from the kitchen counter. "I was saving this until tomorrow," I said, "but tonight seems more appropriate." I handed it to him. His hands trembled as he opened it. Inside were divorce papers. On top was a letter from my attorney confirming that my inheritance had been legally traced, and that every unauthorized transfer had been documented. He looked up at me in disbelief. "You hired a lawyer?" 3 days ago. His shoulders slumped. You knew? I knew enough to stop believing your lies. Tears finally filled his eyes. I made a mistake. I shook my head. No, a mistake is forgetting someone's birthday, choosing to betray your wife, steal her money, and humiliate her in front of everyone. That's a series of decisions. No one argued. Even my parents remained silent, knowing there was nothing left to save. Ethan looked around the room one last time. Every friend he had hoped would admire his confidence now looked at him with disappointment. He quietly walked toward the door. Before leaving, he turned back. I'm sorry. I met his eyes for only a second. I believe you are, but you're sorry because you got caught. Not because you were faithful. He lowered his head and walked out. The door closed behind him. I took a deep breath, leaned over the birthday cake, and blew out all 34 candles. The room erupted into applause. Sophie hugged me tightly. You okay? She asked. I smiled, a real smile this time. For the first time in a long time, I will be. A year later, I bought the home Ethan said we'd never be able to afford. With my inheritance fully recovered and a fresh start ahead of me, I realized something priceless. The worst day of my life had quietly become the beginning of my best one. And the birthday Ethan tried to ruin became the day I finally got my life back. If you want more interesting stories, so don't forget to subscribe to the channel. Thanks for watching.